Welcome to Bite-Sized Stories. Today, we meet Pip. It was an exceptionally murky night, Pip remarked to himself as he gazed out into the distance. The moon was out, he knew, but it was obscured by a thick blanket of clouds and a thick mattress of mist rising up from the surface of the sea and joining together into one viscous, gelatinous layer of fog. He had come to the top of the tower at 10 p.m., as he did every night, to perform the rituals of the Lighthouse Keeper, the methodical, repetitive tasks that had been carried out in this eyrie for generations of keepers before him. Some of his forebears had made minor modifications to the lighthouse, updating to the latest lenses or making metallurgical improvements to the gears, but he himself had made none. He had been chosen for this position for precisely this reason. He was solid, reliable, and not at all prone to change. Prior to applying for this job, Pip had been employed as a salesman, tasked with hawking subpar merchandise to a poor, rural customer base. He was horrendous at it. Not just bad, but epically bad. Despite the incentive of a commission, and despite sticking with it for a full 3 months, he had never been able to sell a single item. Instead, he would call upon each homestead, politely decline tea, as he didn't want to impose on the women who answered the door, and then find himself undertaking all manner of handyman tasks to assist these women whose husbands were off in the fields and whose children were clutching their skirts. In the end, Pip made many friends, and many across the county owed him favors, but he had been unable to generate any income for his employer or to pay his rent. He hadn't actually applied for that sales job, and had anyone consulted him, he would have immediately told them that he would be terrible at it. But no one had consulted him, and frankly, why would they have? A job was a job in those days, and he was lucky to have one, his family said. And if his job paid him nothing, well, then that was his fault. Applying to be the keeper had been a bold move. The first truly independent and decisive action of his life, he recalled. And, 43 years on, he had done nothing like it since. He had asked no woman on a date. He had never dressed up for a dance. He hadn't invested in the stock market or started his own business. He had worn the same 14 shirts for decades, hemming up the frays and patching up the worn elbows each year in the winter, when the days were dark and the gloominess had set in. He would rotate his shirts each day, with laundry day coming around every second Monday, as steady and as regular as his machinery upstairs. The lack of excitement didn't concern Pip, and neither did the solitude. He read, constantly, and knew that other people craved the companionship and supposed contentment that came from other humans. But he could never really understand why they would feel that way. He had grown up in a large family with 11 kids, and there were always so many other people. In his way, in his things, in his seat at the dining room table. So many kids sucking the air out of all of Pip's space. Now, alone in his tower, he felt the quietude was a gift, not a challenge. Occasionally, one of his siblings or many nieces and nephews would come to visit. When they were younger, they had loved to come view all of the mechanical workings, to watch them grind away in their slow, structured, and organized way. Round and round they would go to the ticking of the clock behind them. It was mesmerizing, Pip knew, and sometimes even he would have to pull himself away from the hypnotic nature of it with an intentional force, almost a ripping out, in order to get on to his next tasks. The children had loved it. But now they were older, and Pip had grown odder, and frankly, they had little to discuss anymore. Until the funeral. At the funeral, there was only one topic that anyone wanted to discuss, and that was the inheritance. It wasn't that Pip had inherited money, and even if he had, wouldn't have mattered much. It wasn't that he had inherited jewelry or a business or livestock either. No, none of that. What he had inherited was the land that the lighthouse stood upon and the sweeping rocky beaches that surrounded it. The prior owner had gifted it to him with a very specific note, which read as follows: To Pip, my longest friend, who has steadfastly protected us all, shining his light out over the sea and also onto my land and also into my heart for all these many years. Love, Marilyn.